Welcome to the Climate Collaboratory, where we talk with people who are helping to make a world that works for all. I'm Sue Blythe, and I'm here today with several people. We have co-host Sherie Stark, Esther Fyk, and our special guest is Anastasia Fyk, who just happens to be the daughter of our friend Esther, and we welcome you. Sherie, could you tell us a little bit about our guest today?
Yes, Sue, thank you. Our guest today is Anastasia Fyk, a Canadian farmer who grew up on the same family farm her ancestors from Ukraine established in 1904. So she's a fifth-generation farmer. She's also a board member of the Canadian National Farmers Union and is very active with their movement to shift modern farming methods back to a more sustainable regenerative approach, more in keeping with indigenous people's respect for the Earth's resources. What do you think we can learn from former cultures' approach to agriculture?
So the way we farm now is we're very concentrating on maximum yield, increasing GDP to its maximum, so that we can look better in the global economy. But all of these things seem to be really detrimental when it comes to our ecology and our soil health, our biodiversity, all of those things. Like all of our food that we're growing right now is for export, or primarily. So for example, the food that is being shipped, or we're growing wheat, for example. So this wheat is being then shipped to Italy to be processed into pasta, and then being shipped to China for packaging. And then from China, we then re-import it to Canada. There's an enormous amount of energy lost in that system, through gas emissions, through all kinds of ways. So if we can look at not only growing locally, but also processing locally, we will be able to really contain more of that energy within that system. Also, if we looked at food waste, there's an enormous amount of energy being lost through that. And if we can connect more to local farmers, really understand where our food is coming from, not that it just mysteriously appears on a grocery shelf, but that somebody's hands and energy is going into this food, I think people would be a lot more appreciative and would be less likely to throw away the food. Yeah, there's so many moving parts to this piece, but I think, yeah, that one of that would be like just slowing down in the way we are growing.
And what would you say to the old guard conventional farmers that have the economic system that they're happy with? They want to keep the status quo, to keep their families and their life as is. What would you say to them to challenge them to think about it differently, to move toward these more sustainable methods?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about thinking about the next generation. They're not going to feel the detriment of their actions, but it definitely, their children might, their grandchildren definitely will. And it's basically moving from a self-centered approach to moving to an outlook of doing it for somebody else. And I'm not sure that that kind of mentality is prepared to make those kind of choices, to be honest.
What can average people do to help bring about this change?
So buying locally definitely is one of the things. You put especially with direct marketing, you're dealing directly with the farmers. There's no middleman, so that's going to definitely help with the farmer's pocket, and it's going to cut out the middleman from taking unnecessary profits. It also helps to contain the energy within the system. So if we're not buying something from halfway across the world, all of that energy that has been used for shipping, for growing unsustainably, for example, avocados in Chile, they take enormous amounts of water to grow, which maybe they don't have because a lot of times it's a drought. So we're taking water out of that system so that we can consume it on the other side of the earth. So buying locally, we avoid all of these things. also we need to develop more intricate local systems of not just direct farming, of buying direct like vegetables and other products from the farmer, but other ways of buying locally would be to start developing other processing facilities locally, small artisanal processing facilities. For example, in Europe, most things you buy are local. I mean, less so now, but you can still buy cheese that has been made within 100 kilometers. You can still buy meat that has been butchered locally and sell it and buy it at the butcher. And they seem to be much better quality also, because it's not this like mass way of growing food. It's not a factory. It's somebody it's their business, it's their livelihood, and they take a lot of care of it.
I have a question. When you bought the farm this spring, you must have had a kind of a vision, a dream of what this could be like. So if everything came to be as you envisioned it to be, what would it look like in, say, 5 years?
First of all, I would like to be working in a community with people. So that's definitely part of the dream. Another part would be I would love to have a food forest where people could come and pick the food off trees. Tree crops are really great because you're not constantly tilling soil. So it's perennials versus annual crops are a really good way to keep carbon in the soil rather than tilling every single year. So yeah, food forest would definitely be my dream, and also working with more medicinal plants, primarily perennial plants. Yeah, and especially working with local indigenous nations, where they would be welcome on my land to come and hunt and pick medicine or whatever they need to do as they were promised to do when the original treaties were signed.
How do you think young people look at the stewardship of our planet differently than the older generation got us into this mess?
I think probably how the system is commodified. The older generation is it's hugely into the capitalist system and commodifying everything that's around us, and that's still continuing. But I think the younger generation is maybe a bit more empathetic and is more kind of maybe connected to one another rather than the older generation that is commodified things. And in order to commodify something, you need to simplify it and I guess dehumanize it. So that's when it comes to, for example, the commodification of our resources, commodification of women themselves around the world. That's all part of that same process. So when it comes to the younger generation, I think that because so many people have been working through our own traumas and our own disconnects, the younger generation is coming out just kind of more aware.
Well, I am in awe of your resolve and your courage, and I can't wait to see that forest. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna take a trip to Canada to pick some apples from those trees.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Anastasia.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
And Esther, thank you for raising such a competent, capable person.
I can't take all the credit. You've done a lot on your own, my girl. Really good job.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, to this team, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherie.
See you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
And if you want to find out how you can become a roving reporter for the Climate Collaboratory yourself, or just hear more inspiring stories like this one, you can go to climatecollaboratory.org. Thanks again.